Episode 53. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, Dogmen. Before we bring on tonight's guest, Abe Sias, I've got 4 encounters I want to read for you. The first encounter reads, I was 12 or 13 when this happened. My mother's best friend has a brother who owned a small camper trailer. It was the kind you tow, but it had a small bathroom in it and 2 beds. The kind that fold into tables and a tiny kitchen. He let my mother and her friend, along with myself and my best friend, have it for a weekend. This happened in the Middle South area of Massachusetts in the rural part of Worcester County. I've researched it a fair bit and didn't find any sightings of dogmen here. I only turned up one Bigfoot sighting way back in the 70s, miles from where this happened. The trailer was in a smallish campground. I don't remember its name. It was summer after school got out, but I don't remember which month. Where the trailer was parked, we had a clear view of the check-in, small convenience store, building, and the pool, but the rest of the campsites were pretty far. Most were out of sight, and the ones that weren't were empty. The trailer itself was close to the tree line. Some of the longer tree limbs actually touched it. The land in that part of the state is somewhat forested, but I'd say there's more farmland and fields there than forest, especially near this campground. There were woods, but they weren't terribly thick or continuous. Standing facing the trailer, the admin buildings were off to the left. To the right, much closer, probably 2 car lengths, were a couple picnic tables. Other than the trees ringing the campground, it was fairly open and very slightly hilly. The whole campground had a really creepy feel to it. It honestly looked like something out of a Southern Gothic story. It was a bit run down. The roads in were lined with cornfields. The people that ran it were, not to be mean, but sort of redneck types, right down to faded denim overalls and faint accents. They were pleasant enough, but sort of distant and reserved, especially the guy. He hardly ever looked up when he spoke and didn't deal much with guests. One night my friend and I, who I'm still close friends with to this day, were either getting ready to or had just watched a movie on the tiny television we had. My mother and her friend were out on the picnic table smoking. I want to stop and say I've always been a pretty level-headed person, and I was often told as a kid that I was very mature for my age. The movie we were watching was Aladdin, so it's not like I had horror movies on the brain. Actually, I had never seen a horror movie at that point in my life. If you were standing in the front door, we were in bed on the right. The light switch was on the opposite side of the trailer. My friend said we should turn off the main light and just leave the bathroom light on so we could see the screen better. Now, the bed on the other side of the trailer was the kitchen table, and it was halfway set into a little alcove. There was a window at the back of the trailer over the foot of the bed. To turn off the light, I had to take one step into the alcove. The switch was a few feet, 2 at most, from the window. It was dark out, so I couldn't actually see out the screen into the trees. As I reached for the light switch, something growled. It was the deepest, most resonant growl I've ever heard. I'm 23 now and work at a dog daycare grooming facility, so I've heard a lot of big dogs make a variety of vocalizations. My co-worker owns a 100-pound lab, and her growl doesn't compare to this. I was and still am a huge nature nerd, and I've heard various animal noises in zoos and on television/YouTube. I haven't heard that sound again. The quality of it was canine, or at least reminiscent of one, but it was so deep. I could feel it in my sternum. There weren't many dogs around at all, and we never heard any barking during our stay. I'm positive this was not a dog. We don't have wolves, and it was just too deep anyway, both from the sound and what happened next. I froze when I heard it for a good 5 to 8 seconds. I looked right at my friend, and she was reading the movie case, totally oblivious. I asked if she made a noise, and she said no. What kind of noise? She's not at all the type to play pranks or mess with me. My eyes were watering, and I must have looked scared because she got white and I knew it wasn't her. That's when I moved. It took me maybe 5 bounding steps to hit the bed, but in the split second before I hit the bed, as I was jumping, something hit the trailer. This trailer was at least 7 feet tall. It was up off the ground enough that you had to use the 2 full down steps to get in the door. The hit came right above our bed near the roof. It was such a strong impact it shook the whole trailer. It's hard to describe, but it was like a small area of impact like a fist or rock would have made. I don't think it was a rock though, because it was too forceful and there were no large rocks on the ground in the morning. We of course started screaming and hid under our blankets. I don't know how long we hid, but I think it was probably 15 minutes max. My mother and her friend had been outside the whole time. When I got the guts to peek out the door, they were out there smoking and laughing as usual. They hadn't heard a thing, even us screaming. I've heard black bears growl on television and in person many times. This wasn't the same, tone or quality-wise. Plus, we don't often get bears in this area of Massachusetts. When we got older, we wondered if it was a Bigfoot, but the alleged recordings and eyewitness descriptions don't really match. That growl was so deep and menacing that to this day I won't go near an open window at night. If I have to, I literally get shaky, and I'm not a weak person. My friend doesn't remember as much as I do, as she wasn't paying attention. My mother and her friend believe me, but never heard a thing. The back of the camper was close enough to the trees that they very well may not have been able to see what growled at me, even if it was huge. I still absolutely love the woods. I go hiking whenever possible. I'm currently working on climbing as many of the White Mountains in New Hampshire as I can. I'm definitely always hyper alert though whenever I'm in the woods since this incident. I've only had 2 other experiences that could maybe be called strong. A very odd smell/feeling on Mount Acela in New Hampshire, and a strange 4-legged canine in the city I live in. I've always wondered what growled in that window and why. The next story reads, "Hello, I want to share my encounter with what I believe to be a dogman. Now before I continue, I want to say that during my encounter I never saw a dogman. I only heard strange noises that I can't seem to explain. My encounter happened when I was between the ages of 9 and 11. I'm honestly not sure, it's been so many years, but I still remember it like it happened yesterday. Shortly before my encounter, my younger sister and I had been talking, and somehow she brought up how she had seen something that she said resembled a werewolf outside her bedroom window one night. She described the creature as being roughly 5 to 6 feet in height, covered in hair and walking on 2 legs like a person. At first, I thought she might have possibly seen a Sasquatch until she told me it had a snout and pointed ears like a wolf or dog. In all honesty, I thought she had dreamt the whole thing up until she told me that she had seen it several more times before that. Still, I thought that she had just imagined it and quickly brushed it aside. That was until a month or so later when I had my own encounter. I awoke one fall night, I believe it was sometime in early October around 3 a.m. For some reason I couldn't sleep, so I decided to turn on my TV to pass the time and hopefully fall back asleep. After probably 15 to 20 minutes, I heard something outside my bedroom window. At first it sounded like scurrying, and then it turned into a scratching sound, like something was dragging its fingernails across my window screen. At first, I thought it might have been an insect, only to realize that it was too cold for insects to be out. Then I thought it might have been a neighbor who might have had a few beers too many, thinking they were at their house and trying to get in. So I said in a loud voice, "Go home, man, you're drunk and at the wrong house." There was no response. There was just that continuous scratching on the window screen. At that point, I was a little worried and noticed that my drapes were slightly open in the center towards the bottom. I also noticed that my legs could be clearly seen from the outside, so I quickly moved them. Whatever was outside immediately stopped when I moved, paused, and then began scratching faster. This continued on until the sun came up, just a continuous pawing/scratching at my window from 3:30 a.m. until 7. I was absolutely terrified the entire time. In all honesty, I felt like whatever was outside was playing with me in a malicious way and that it viewed me as food. Now, I can't say with 100% certainty that what was outside was a dogman, but I do have several good reasons to think it could have been one. Number one, my father and I are both hunters, and everyone in our neighborhood knows we own guns. Almost everyone in our neighborhood owns one also. It would be foolish to scratch on someone's window at 3:30 a.m. and not expect a 12-gauge deer slug to come ripping through your head or chest if you did that here. Reason number two is, people that I have told my story to have asked me, how do you know it wasn't a Bigfoot? I have heard of Sasquatch peeking in people's windows and being generally very curious. However, why would one sit outside my window for almost 4 hours pawing at it? It might do that for 5 to 10 minutes maybe. After that, it runs the risk of being seen and or shot. I just don't see it being a Bigfoot. Thanks for letting me share my story. The third story reads, I own 200 acres of land in Hillman, Michigan. One time I heard a single loud howl from what, I don't know, shut up 2 or 3 dozen coyotes. After hearing that howl, I didn't hear the coyotes for weeks. I also found 2 mangled deer carcasses on my property. We do have bears here, but I've never heard of a bear outrunning a 200-pound deer. I don't go out into the fields at night anymore because of something that happened on my property on October 26th of 2012 at about 9 p.m. Something took a doe I had shot out of the back of my truck. My truck is lifted 4.5 inches and sits on decent-sized tires. My truck had run out of gas in my back field next to a patch of woods on my property. I'd say the field is about 15 acres. It's a little spread I always use. I never had this kind of thing happen though. After I shot the deer, I took a nap. It's what I usually do so I can give the deer time to die if it runs. I just track the trail it leaves behind. Quite a bit of time had passed since I had shot the deer, so the other deer had time to calm down and come back into the area. I had loaded the doe into the back of my truck and started the engine. Before I even hit the gas pedal, I noticed the engine was chugging, so I shut the truck off. I grabbed my headlamp and got out of the truck. When I had walked around to the back of the truck on my way back to the farmhouse, that's when all the noise started. As I was walking away from the truck, I heard turkeys up in the trees making noises and the sound of something running through the leaves. I thought it was just another deer running away. Then I noticed that the noise was getting quieter, so I stopped. What I heard next sounded like something was scratching on the side of my truck. Then I heard what sounded like a boar hog squealing, so I started running. We have hogs around here, but not very many of them. After running about 200 yards, I could see that nothing was chasing me, so I stopped running. Whatever was making those sounds, I figured it didn't see me, so I just walked the rest of the way to the house and kept listening to see if I could hear anything. While I was listening, I heard something that sounded the way a pit bull sounds when it's playing with a chew toy. Whatever it was, it made deep growling sounds and a couple of thumps that sounded like a golf ball hitting the ground. It wasn't very loud, though. I stayed up for maybe an hour listening, and then it just went quiet outside. It was completely quiet. There wasn't a single noise. The last encounter reads, while I was out walking my dog at about 5 a.m. early one morning, I turned to go down an alley. There was a very fresh dusting of snow on the ground. One side of the alley had a big space like there should have been a house there, but there wasn't. Looking at the ground right in front of me, I saw a very large set of dog tracks. They appeared to be coming through the vacant lot area on the one side of the alley and continued through the alley where I had just come. The thing that really captured my attention was the fact that the tracks were so far apart and definitely bipedal. I measured them by walking step by step from one track to the next, toe to heel, and estimated the tracks to be at least 8 feet apart. I care for wolf dogs and have spent many hours in the woods with them and have become very familiar with their tracks in the snow and how they appear when they're running. This animal had to have been quite large and moving very fast from the appearance of the tracks. My wolf dogs step in their own tracks, something I've noticed dogs don't do, and it's always obvious they're quadrupeds. I had never heard of the Dogman before, but the minute I saw those tracks, I knew I was looking at something very unusual and began to research the possibilities of what could have left those tracks. This was in Ames, Iowa, late winter, early spring, 2014. Thanks all 4 of you for submitting those reports. tonight's guest is Abe Sias. Abe, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
My name is Abe Sias. Live in Killeen, Texas, where Ford Station is. Prior military. I live in Elms Grove Estate, mobile home park.
Well, thank you for your service to our country. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. When was the first time you heard the term Dogman?
The first time I heard Dogman was like 3 or 4 days ago on a site.
I've got you. All of the events we're going to talk about tonight happened in and around a place called Elms Grove Park. Tell us about the place.
Elms Grove Park, there's a park within the park itself. And where I live at, there's the park section. There's a creek 100 meters away from here and nothing but woods. There's all kinds of wildlife out here. There's deer, raccoons, bobcats, all kinds of critters out here.
With all the strange things you have happening in and around that park, I wouldn't be surprised if you did have some old Indian burial mounds in the area, do you?
All I know is a woman, a Philippine woman, that her son was a historian for an Indian tribe in Arizona that lived in the corner near the wood line. And she would tell me not to go into the woods because there was something there when I first moved into the park.
Is that the woman who heard the banging on a tree late one night?
Yes.
How did that go down? She heard the bang on the tree and then she came and got you, or what happened that night?
She was walking her dog in the park at nighttime, and she was going to take it for a walk like she always does. And I got a phone call from her saying that there was something there banging the tree beside her house. So I went over there to see what was going on. She had the doors locked and everything. She was scared, terrified. But when I got there, I did not hear no banging or nothing. But I did see like a tree of some sort had nearby her house, like somebody had thrown a piece of wood or something.
Yeah, in the pre-interview, when you were going down the list of all the strange things that have happened and continue to happen in that park and around the park, wow, you've got some strange activity in that area. I'm not really sure what to think about it. Do you have many cornfields nearby?
Not cornfields, just a lot of wooded area, and the creek that runs through the park. But I know in the past, heard that there used to be a lot of tribes that used to live in this section of where I live at, or throughout the area itself in Bell County.
You told me that at nighttime, big things can be seen moving in and around the park. What's going on with that?
I've seen deer before there grazing on the grass, but this is no deer that I've been seeing. They're real dark, and they're tall. They're actually running around in the park at nighttime.
Do the parents in the area know about this and as a result keep their kids inside at night or what?
Well, there's a lot of people before that would hardly go to the park because of strange things that would happen to them. I remember some younger kids that would always go to the park and they would say there was something there, but I would tell them what they would see, and they would say it was just something dark there. But they wouldn't even go to the park either. They just pointed out the vicinity of where they would see it.
Yeah, with all the strange things going on around there, I can't blame them for not wanting to spend much time in that park. There was a homeless man you were telling me about that used to sleep under a bridge in the woods. He doesn't sleep there anymore. Tell us about him.
Yes, I seen him one time, and I gave him some water and stuff like that. Try to help him out, get on his feet. He was sleeping underneath the bridge, and he told me that one night he seen some figures on the side of the creek, and he said he was in a sleeping bag asleep, and he didn't want to move because he said what he seen was not a deer or any other kind of animal he's ever seen before. He said there were creatures of some sort. So what I did is I tried to help him out for a while. I got a tent and I put the tent by my home so he could stay here for a little bit so he can get on his feet. But he never went back there. He had moved. The first time I seen him, was behind a convenience store. He was sleeping in between two air conditioning units, and he told me the story of what happened to him there.
You said he moved on and refused to sleep there, but there's someone that is currently sleeping under that bridge, a homeless person.
Yes, I just I went down to see, and there's a tent set up underneath the bridge right now.
Ew, that's pretty unnerving. I wonder if that person, whoever it is, has seen anything or knows the potential danger that they're putting themselves in.
I don't know, but I'm thinking I'm gonna have to go talk to them about that area as soon as I can because I don't want nothing to happen to them.
Yeah, I'm sure if they don't know about it, they'll appreciate you filling them in on what's going on there. All right, Abe, let's talk about that first encounter you had with the dog man. What happened that night?
My AC unit had given out. I had a window fan giving me air, and I heard a woman yelling for help. I shut off the fan, and I heard the woman still yelling for help. So I came outside, and I was hearing the voice of a woman yelling for help. So I went back inside the house, grabbed a bat, and I came out, and I started following the voice, the cry for help. Went through the park. As I cut through the park, I could hear that the voice was coming from the wood line itself. So I'm out there listening to this cry of help. So I grabbed my bat that I had in hand, and I went into the darkness of the wood line, following the cry for help. When I walked through the path that was there, and I went around the bend, I could hear the voice getting closer and closer. So I kept on being cautious with my bat in my hand, ready to swing to see if I've seen somebody doing something to this woman. But when I got to a certain location in that wood line, the cry for help stopped. When the cry for help stopped, it felt weird to me because it was around 2:30 or 3 in the morning, and I'm thinking at that point in time, what am I doing out here if there's no woman to help? When I turned around, that's when I seen them. I seen six of them, three on one side of the path and three on the other. They were pretty tall. I would say between 8 to 9 foot tall. I could see their eyes glowing, looking at me. At that point in time, the only thing I could do is not be afraid because I don't know what kind of animal or creature I was dealing with. So I started praying within myself and tried to stay as calm as possible. As I started walking forward and praying within myself, I could see these creatures looking at me, and they were following me with their heads. I was short compared to them, and I'm 5'11". I kept on walking, and I kept on praying, and I came around the bend, and as soon as I came out of the wood line, I started walking a little bit faster. When I got halfway through the park, I took up running back home. I was in shock when I got back home, that I had to take a shower just to realize what just happened in the wood line. At that point in time, my son was 5 years old, and I gave him a big hug because I believe I was in a predicament that I shouldn't be here right now.
So you hear these screams. You think it's a woman in distress in the woods. It's nighttime. You go charging up that path into the woods trying to save whoever this poor woman is. You get a certain distance in when you decide that maybe it's not worth pursuing, so you turn around, look, and see 6 dogmen. You've got 3 on either side of the path. At that point, when you saw them, you have to admit most people in that situation would be very reluctant to walk between these dogmen to try and get back home. I've got to ask you this. If you hadn't walked down that path between those 6 dogmen, what was your other option? If you went the other way, how far would you have had to go to get to anything?
I had no other option because all around me was woodline. The creek was 25 meters away from me. It was pitch dark in the woods. The only option I had was to go back down the path that I came through. I know I'm not no superhero or nothing like that, but being trained in the military, I know fear in combat, you're not supposed to fear fear itself. So that's exactly what I had to do, is just focus fear out of my mind at that point in time.
I wish I had that gene, because in that situation, Abe, I don't see how I could have put fear totally out of my mind. That's not a good situation to be in. All right, so you're walking down that path. You've got 6 dogmen on either side of you. You said they're between 8 and maybe 9-ish feet tall. As you're walking amongst them, did you hear them make any sounds? Give us a play-by-play on what you saw, heard, smelled, anything like that.
I believe they were sensing if I was afraid of them because as I was walking forward, I seen them looking at me, and as I was passing them, their heads were looking at me to see, I believe, sense me, sense if I had any fear in my body of some sort. They was seeing what I was going to do. I'm thinking if I would have took off running or been afraid that maybe I wouldn't have made it out of the woods that night. That if I would have took off running, they probably would have chased me. That's what I believe, like any wild animal would do.
I don't think it can be argued you handled it the right way. If you hadn't have handled that situation the right way, you wouldn't be here to even talk about it, so hats off to you for that. You've got some brass to be able to handle it the way you did.
It was about, at that point in time, the only thing I could think of is make it home safely. I had to zone them out of my mind, even though they was there looking at me. I had to take my mind somewhere else. The only thing I could do is pray within myself. I believe that that's what helped me was the prayer that I was saying the Our Father within myself, and that's I believe what helped me guide me back out into safety.
Well, it sure sounds like you did have some outside help that night to be able to get through that nasty situation. When you saw the 6 dogmen, was there any kind of a variation in their appearance? Did they all look the same color, same build, same eye color? What did you notice on that?
They were all around the same height. What stood out the most, since it was pitch dark, I think I had no flashlight or nothing like that, was their eyes. And as high their eyes were, they were way taller than me. That's what it was, their size that kind of freaked me out the most. How big they were, and they were standing. They was standing on 2 legs. I could just see their silhouette of their bodies and the eyes at that point in time. The glowing eyes that was looking at me. They were white.
White eyes.
White eyes. That's what I seen that night.
Wow, that's strange. That had to be one sight to see. How close to the path were these dogmen?
The path itself, I would say, would be like 7 to 8 foot wide, and I walked along the center, so there was probably like 4 feet from each side away from me. They were close, real close to the edge of the path, that I could see them standing there. I'm more sure they could reach and touch me, as big as they were.
That was going to be my next question. It sounds like they were close enough where if they wanted to, they could have reached out at any moment and grabbed you.
Oh yeah, they could have easily, I believe, taken me out there from each side. I felt set up when I turned around and I seen these creatures there, and I didn't hear the woman yelling for help. I felt like I got tricked into going there like an ambush of sorts.
I've heard that they might be able to make sounds like a baby's cry and some other strange sounds. I've actually heard recordings of strange sounds that they've made, but I've never heard any sounds that could even approach sounding like a woman screaming, so I don't really know what that's all about, what made that sound, but it sure makes you wonder. If they can make a sound like that and lure people into the woods somehow, that just makes it even worse. If I understand this correctly, you never did hear them make any sounds. As you were walking between them, you're saying that they were silent.
Silent. I didn't see them standing there when I was going towards the voice, but when I turned around, I believe they were right along me all along. As I walked through the path, I just didn't see them because I was my mind was focused on finding the woman yelling for help. But when I turned my back around, they was right there behind me.
Ooh,
I believe they was trying to sneak up on me of some sort.
that is strange. If they were trying to sneak up on you, Abe, what I really don't understand is you turned around and wound up walking right between the whole group of them. They could have had you right there on the spot if they would have wanted to. If they were trying to sneak up on you from behind, I wonder what the end goal was.
I'm thinking that they wanted me to get scared and take off running a different direction instead of the path that I traveled. I believe they wanted me to go run towards the wood line further deep into the woods so they could get me even better. Well, that's what I think. But like I said, I focused on not being afraid, and I started praying, and I knew that through prayer that I was going to come out into safety, one way or the other. I'm just glad that nothing happened to me that night.
Oh, I'm glad too. From the way you describe it, I think a countless number of things could have happened that night that would have resulted in a very unfortunate outcome. I'm just so glad that somehow you're able to get through that situation in one piece. What a nightmare. Now, this is kind of related to what we've been talking about here. There have been situations where I've been in a situation that was really bad. Nothing like that, but I've been in some bad situations before. In the heat of the moment, I handled it like a champ, but after the fact, I didn't handle it so well. You think about it too much. Sometimes you might have a nightmare or two, or maybe more. Did you have any lingering after effects, bad nightmares, PTSD from that experience, or what?
Well, after that, I stopped going to the woods at nighttime. As a matter of fact, I kept my son away from going to the park there for a long time. Or if I see children at the park, even during the day, I will go and tell them to leave, that they shouldn't be there because of what happened to me. I was afraid that something might happen to them. Anybody I would see there at the park, I would tell them to be careful. I wouldn't say exactly what I've seen, but I would tell them there was wild animals there to be careful. So I was looking out for the people that will go into that section of the park where I had that encounter.
No one knows what it takes to get these things to attack, why they attack when they do, but I think if almost anyone else would have been placed in that situation that you found yourself in, I'd say there's probably a 90% chance that that person wouldn't have walked out of there alive. Moving on to a different topic here, Abe, you talked about that den, that strange den you found in the park. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I found a den, and there was a lot of skeletons of skulls of different animals. But I found a Doberman dog, a black Doberman dog, with his spine ripped out of its back, and it looked like the kill was maybe like a week or 2 weeks old, but he was laying there with his spine ripped out.
That had to be one sight to see. You said you did find a whole bunch of skulls in that den as well?
Yes, different skulls from different animals. You could see the sheds of the furs, different furs, all over the ground where this den was. I've seen two of those dens. One was in an open field, and the other one was underneath a big tree in another wooded section, and a lot of bones there also. In the park itself, I found the tails of cats and dogs, but no bodies. So I don't know what happens to the bodies of this animal. But I always find like tails from of raccoons, tails of foxes, tails of squirrels, but no bodies, just the tails.
That's really strange. Sure makes you wonder what's going on behind that. Well, moving on, Abe, let's talk about the other Dogman encounter you had. From what I understand, you had this one with your nephew?
Yes, it was. I was sitting in front of my mobile home on a picnic table. He was just fixing to graduate high school, and he was talking about wanting to join the military. So I was telling him what to do if he wanted to join in. And as we were talking, it was around 1, 2 in the morning. It was fresh, a fresh night. I felt like something was looking at me. When I turned to my right, I seen a head over my neighbor's SUV. And at that point in time, I thought somebody was trying to break into the SUV. So I took off over there to see who it was. But then, as I went around the SUV, I seen something going out the back gate of the yard. So I was telling my nephew what I seen, and as I looked across my yard, I could see something walking on all fours. At first, I thought it was a dog. Then I thought it was a deer. But then when I looked at it, it looked too big on all fours to be a dog or a deer. So it was on the other street, and I was on my street. So we started walking parallel to it, me and my nephew. And something strange happened. It stood up on two legs, and he was huge, very muscular. His legs were curved a certain way backwards, I guess like a dog of some sort, but the upper torso was real long. He had a long neck and pointy ears. It was massive, and as far as I could see, it looked grayish at that point in time. It started running, but it wasn't a run. It was more of a long stride, kind of like when a deer prances to get away when it gets startled. Well, that's how it was running. It was a long stride, like a deer would jump. In which my nephew, he's way younger than me, and he took off sprinting. He was in track and everything, and he couldn't catch up to it. It was too fast. It had a long stride. It was all muscular. I never seen nothing like that. His legs were massive, but they looked muscular, just like the upper body was very muscular. It had a long neck. I could see the side of its face, but it was all grayish. It seemed like it was more. I don't think it was scared of us, but I think it was more just wanted to get away from us. We lost it in the wood line by the creek. We didn't even see it go from the sidewalk into the creek. That's how fast it moved. I thought he was going to run on all fours, but it didn't. It took off running on twos.
You said you and your nephew were running after it. Did you really think you had a chance in catching it, or what?
Not a chance in catching it. I wish I would have had a camera or recorder to record that event that happened, but like I said, I was just outside talking to my nephew, so I didn't have no camera, no recorder. I just wanted to see where it was going to, and I seen it go past a mobile home, and that's the last time I seen it, in which the only thing I could think, he ran into the wood line. But yes, we had no chance of catching it. It was too fast.
I'm so glad you didn't catch that thing. I don't think that would have been a good situation if you had.
He was looking at us, chasing it, because it turned his head some, looking at us. But it reminded me of how a donkey looks at you before it takes a kick at you. But it was pretty big. The power it had it wasn't even moving its arms or nothing like a normal human being would move his arms to run. It was just using the power of its legs, and it was running fast. I don't even consider it a run. I consider it more of I guess one step is like a run for it, but it was too big. It was massive that by the time it took 3 or 4 steps, it dusted us. It was too fast.
Yeah, sounds like it was pretty fast. These things normally are, so I'm not surprised it was so easily able to outdistance you and your nephew there.
The stride of it, I think it's what gave it the distance from us. It's stride. It's a long stride.
I'm not sure how long after that incident it was, Abe, but you told me about a picture that you took of what you'd believe to be a dogman. Tell us about that photo.
The following day, when I had the first incident in the wood line, I went back to take pictures of the area just to see what I caught in the vicinity. Because at that point in time, I didn't know what had happened the night that I heard the woman yell. It just felt weird to me of what happened to me, and I just wanted to go to the area to take pictures to see if I caught anything. The sun was settling down, and I took some pictures, and I believe I showed you the picture of what I believe to be maybe a dogman standing by a tree. You could see something, but it's not a good picture. Since I had the encounter, I'll be able to tell if it was the same thing I seen the night before, but it looks the same, the silhouette of what I've seen. So I think they were still in the area at that point in time.
You sent that picture to me. I took a good look at it. It wasn't clear enough to tell if that actually is a dogman or not. It might be, but like I told you after you had sent it to me, I just couldn't see the subject clearly enough to make a solid determination on exactly what I was looking at, so I really don't know, but I will post that picture in the YouTube version of this show.
I just try to look up for people not to be afraid, not to have fear if they're running to something like this. It's hard because that's in our nature to be afraid. It's part of our structure of the senses, but I hope nobody ever encounters something like that, especially at night. I'm a spiritualist, and I used to go out sit in the park all the time, and I used to go walking at night. I don't do that no more. Not after that incident.
You used to cut through the woods to go to the store, Abe. You used to take the same path every time. One day you found something that was interesting on the path. Tell us about that.
Well, I remember one time I was cutting through the path, and I found the path is like a little cliff. You climb it, and there's a tree that's there that we would normally grab the tree and pull ourselves up. When we try to go across the path again, the tree was broken in half, like something broke it. Not just that tree, and then there was another tree that was blocking the path itself, like something didn't want us to go through that path.
Any ideas on what might have done that? Do you think maybe a person did it?
I don't think it was a person because that tree was pretty thick, and the way the break looks, it doesn't look like it was sawed off. It looks like it was just broken. You could see the tree was broken, and it was a solid tree. It was just broken, like it got broken like a when you break a stick. That's the way the break looks.
So the tree wasn't dead. This was a live tree that was broken and torn down.
Exactly, a live tree. It was
Ew.
broken.
About how big around was it?
I would say it was probably like 2 to 3 foot wide.
Ew. Yeah, no person did that. Moving on, not long ago you took a group of ghost hunters into the woods there. Now they probably wouldn't go into those woods even if you paid them. Why is that?
I took them there because they said that they believe what I encountered there the night. I told them a story of what happened to me, and they said that maybe I might have encountered something else, like a bad spirit or bad omen of some sort. But when I took them there, something happened to them. One of the females took off running because she said she was seeing something, heard something, and as she was taking off running out of the wood line, I took her to the same section where I encountered those six figures. She took off running, and we found her in the entrance just laying down on the ground. She had no energy. We picked her up and took her to safety. And then one of the other guys that was there with that team, the same thing happened to them, but they got dropped. Like they had no energy, and they just were laying on the ground. So I had to pick them up and get them out of there also. The weird thing about that both of them, the same things were happening to them, the same, like the side effect of whatever happened to them. They said they were seeing some dark figures of some sort, and they kept on seeing the dark figures. So I don't know exactly what I was seeing because I could not see them with my eyes, but they were describing what they were seeing. What they were describing was actually kind of like what I seen that night in the woods. So I don't know exactly what attacked them, or if a dogman is that fast that they could actually drop somebody in the ground through just touching them.
Whatever it was that they ran into, if it was scary enough to spook them and run them out of the woods like that, being ghost hunters and everything, it must have been really spooky. With some of the things you've been talking about going on in that area, it sure makes it sound like you've got some kind of demonic activity going on or something like that that's above and beyond dogman issues.
I tried to figure out what was going on because, like I said, I seen the one that took off running down the road. It never disappeared, so I figured it was nothing of a spirit because I've seen its form actually running away. And then I had this other incident in which, I didn't know what a dogman was, like I said, till like 3 days ago. But I'm just trying to make sense of everything that happened to me that night and the other things that I've seen here in this park.
Yeah, that was such a strange occurrence. You could put a lot of thought into it and still not be able to make any sense out of it.
Till this day, I don't know what it could be, but I do remember seeing these creatures there. And the one running down the street in which it was no deer, because I know how deers look like. It was all muscular, very muscular, big creature.
As if that wasn't all strange enough, all the things we've already gone over, you said there was a woman who was found dead alongside a road nearby. Tell us about that.
Yes, it was a Puerto Rican woman. She was always coming, borrowing cigarettes, asking my sister would give her a cigarette. She would cut through the wood line, not to where I had the encounter, but she would cut nearby there. I was cutting through the wood line to get to the main road to go to the corner store. Well, one day, early in the morning, she got run over by a vehicle. The person said that she just jumped in the way of the vehicle, but this woman, she was never depressed or would be a woman that's just going to jump in the way of a vehicle. So how she got in front of the vehicle, I really do not know. The only thing I know is that the man said she came out of the wood line and jumped in front of the vehicle. But she's traveled this path and done this walk to the store many, many times.
Did the bystanders say anything about how it might have looked like she was running from something?
The only thing he said is that she jumped in the way of his vehicle. That's all he said.
That's the only thing that I could think of that would make sense to explain why she might have done that.
I believe so too. If something was chasing her and she just going to jump in the way, she must have been running with some fear. And the path that she would walk through the woods, there was no other path. There was nothing. She would make her own path and just cut through the woods itself.
Also, this was not the path that you used to take to go to the store then.
Yes, she would just cut through the woods itself. She would not go through no main path. She would just cut through the woods.
Well, I'll tell you what, Abe, it's about time to wrap this show up. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yes, the thing I would like to say is if anybody ever encounters what I believe to be now the Dogman, don't be afraid. It's going to try to scare you. It's trying to see if you're going to run. Try to get to safety the safest way as possible, even if you have to reroute the path that you walked. But I believe if you pray within yourself that through prayer you can go back into safety. Just not be afraid. Even though it's going to be a scary sight if you ever encounter the Dogman, just don't be afraid. It's harder said than done, but I believe that you can go into safety. Just to try to get there safely, as not run out of the vicinity, but just walk away from it, because I believe if you do run away, it's going to know you're afraid and it might come after you, like any other kind of wild animal.
Yeah, keeping your composure when you're faced with something like that is, like you said, much easier said than done, but those are really good words nonetheless. Abe, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it to share my story with you.
Oh, thanks again for coming. Well, have yourself a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter and you'd like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you.